Hello, Henrietta, and hello, AT. Oh my gosh. And there are more people here. I have no idea who you are yet because I'm checking the chat room as I go. Wow, it was like epic fail. Everything went wrong, and all I could hear was this beeping, this ping, 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 ping in my headphones. And that was it. Hi. I hope Erica is going to join us. Dawn is sick today. She woke up sick, so that kind of stinks. But I do have stuff that I was going to share, and a question I was going to ask you. Ooh, 7:30. God, I totally lose track of the amount of time that separates the continents, which is not so good. I really need to remember. Anyway, the thing I was going to show you is this that I am wearing. Is I made this, I think, 2 summers ago, maybe, and it's I'm going to get closer to the thing so you can see. It is not focusing very well. I'll figure out a way to do it. There we go. Okay. So it's got a really simple yarn over knit 2 together pattern, and it's super lightweight. This is on my Ravelry page, so I actually have the information on what the yarns are, but I love this thing because it is super crazy simple, and it has, aren't they great colors? I know, I love it. It has a kind of a roughly edge to it, which I liked, but I also like it because it is a shrug. And when I am cold, it's my arms and obviously my hands that get cold. And so if I can keep my arms and hands warm, I'm fine. But if I have too much on me, it's way too hot. So this worked out really well. And it's especially good, I think it's especially good at summer because it is really lightweight, but because it is lightweight wool, it does do a marvelous job of being that kind of thing that you need when there's too much air conditioning. Not that that's a problem right now, but when there's too much air conditioning, I get chilled really, really fast. I don't know, Henrietta, do you have issues with air conditioning in Denmark in the summer? I mean, now that things are warming up, are you guys starting to see more air conditioning units and problems in your neck of the continent? I know when I was in Britain, there were no air conditioning units to speak of. The one summer that I was there when it was ridiculously hot. And then the summer we were in Finland, we were there in early July, and it wasn't too bad. But especially in the Southwest, you'll go from 105 outside to really icily air conditioned. But so this is the thing that I'm wearing that I made, past tense, and this is one of Jenny the Potter's necklaces. Oh, I don't know if I can get that close enough to you. I don't know what the distance is for those. I have no idea what the distance is to make the camera focus. I have to figure that out. See, I wondered. So Denmark has no air conditioning. Are you guys starting to heat up? I mean, once it gets above what, like 30 degrees centigrade, isn't that hot? Not that it's doing that right now, I understand, but thinking ahead, knitting now for the future. I don't know, AT, do you guys get really stupid hot down in, are you in South Carolina? North Carolina? I know you're in Carolina. So that's the thing I made. The things I am making, I needed some stupid crochet, you know, something that you could just do while you're waiting in line and you know you're going to have to put it down. And so I did what Dawn was wearing last week, where she said it was a crochet one. Yes, AT, it was stamped with the knitting stitches. That's it. Yay, I'm glad you could see. She said it was 66 stitches, 66 single crochets or chain stitches and then single crochets, and it's single crochet, chain one, single crochet, chain one, single crochet, chain one. And I had really not particularly expensive or fancy yarn sitting around. It's like, I think it's acrylic everything. Yeah, it's Red Heart, and there's a story about that. So it is Red Heart Boutique in, see, now I'm still trying to get that to focus. Let's see, there we go. So unforgettable, and it is in colorway Echo, 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 Echo. And I am stunned at how gorgeous it's coming out. This is so crazy simple. So the, let's see if we can get that. I have a light over here. Why don't I just aim it so that it helps? There we go. So it's got these color changes. No, that didn't help so much. Probably see them better over here. The color changes are really, really subtle in this stuff. It goes from a gray to a green to a kind of a mauvey pink, and it's doing it without pooling or doing anything wonky or weird. It's just really subtle, but you're definitely getting stripes, which is one of the things that I liked on Dawn's cowl last week. Oh, yay. Oh, you're using the same, it's nice yarn to work with. And I think especially if you're starting to crochet for the first time, this is a knockout because it's a single, which I like. So like Dawn was talking about last week, there's no plies. It doesn't get splitty and stupid or anything like that. Instead, it's really easy to work with. It's soft. It's one of those acrylics that doesn't feel acrylic-y, and it'll be good for people who are itchy on their neck, like Heather. So I'm so excited, and I don't even think I have the right crochet hook size. I've got it going on a, it's what I could find. It's this old plastic one that probably came from my grandmother's stash. I think it's a K. They stamp it on these things, and my eyes are not happy about that anymore. It is a 10.5. I think that's a K. So super crazy easy. And I'm glad to know you feel the same way about the yarn, AT. And Henrietta, you said you have bone china that has knitting stitches stamped into it, Henrietta? Holy cow. Where did you, like, bone china necklace or bone china things? That is so cool. I am glad that it never gets up to, 30 centigrade, Henrietta, because I've been in it and it's miserable. So Henrietta, I'll send you the, or I'll post a link in the show notes, because it's Red Heart, which you can go to at www.redheart.com. It's all one word. Red Heart. I had a friend who had a knitting store in Brooklyn. It's out of business now. It was called the Knitting Salon. And she had really cool, locally sourced wools and cottons and silks. And it was all, really nice and not terribly expensive. She really managed to keep the prices down. She kept her overhead low, and she constantly had little old ladies in Brooklyn coming in, opening the door, the bell would ding, and they'd say, "Do you have any Red Hot?" And she'd look up and say, "No, we don't have any Red Hot." And they're like, "How can you not have any Red Hot? Everybody's got to have Red Hot." And then they'd get miffed and they'd leave. So that became the catchphrase. "Do you have any Red Hot?" Because Brooklyn. So this I will check, Henrietta, and see if there's anything similar. Is there a European company? This is actually a good question. Is there a European company that is good at putting out low end price, but pretty decent structure? The feel of it is pretty good for acrylics, because we have a couple in the States that do a a pretty good job with, well, not just a pretty good job. Over the last 15 years, they've done an incredible job of improving the acrylic yarns to the point where sometimes you really can't even tell. So Red Heart, I think, has come the farthest. And Lion Brand, of course, has woolies and the blends and stuff like that. And those are, I think, they're great, especially when you're learning and you need something that feels real. Okay, I will totally put up the link and find some information for you. And it's, oh, interesting, because this was Jenny the Potter, who's in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or St. Paul, Minnesota. I can't remember where she is. Those two cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, are like smashed up against each other, so it's pretty equivalent. The second thing I wanted to show you and find out if you had any experience with anything like this, because I'm making this one up as I go. I have dropped my balls. That sounds so funny and wrong. I have 2 unidentified balls of yarn. I have no idea. They're clearly from the same company because they came in cakes that were identical. And this one is all blues and greens, and that is not a black. That is like a dark khaki green, like an army green. Oh, it was focusing and then it stopped again. I'm going to have to start getting manicures if I'm going to keep doing this. Well, you can kind of see. So the blues are kind of aqua teal blues, and then there's a really nice kind of lime green that pops, and it gets even greenier at one point, but that doesn't last for very long. And then black, and it's either an acrylic or a blend. I really wish I had kept the ball bands with them, but I am making a cuff for a friend. It's a very specific kind of cuff. And I thought, well, she likes ocean colors. I could use these since I had it laying around. And then I thought, but she's an interesting person, so I need to do something with the pattern. So I started off the cuff in a 2x2 knitted rib. And there you can kind of see where some of the color changes are happening, because they're subtle and they're nice. And you can also see where I had started and then stopped off years ago. Because I had this left over. I was going to make a mitten out of it. And when she texted me and said, I need a cuff, and I need a cuff for a very, very, for a very, very specific problem. And her problem is this. She has to get intravenous transfusions of a particular medicine I think it's every 6 weeks. But when she gets the IV drip put in, it's not in her hand or in her wrist or anything. It's up here now, because she's had these for a while, and finding a vein has been harder and harder. So she winds up with this IV sticking out of her arm. And she said while she was doing it, while they were able to get a vein on her wrist, she was able to use some of those Knitty's version of the Canucks that looked like that, except out of better yarn. And I've knit 3 or 4 pairs of those for her, but they don't go up far enough. So I asked her, well, do you want fingerless mitts that just have a very long cuff on them, or do you want just a cuff to cover that part? And she said just a cuff. So she only needs 1 arm and 1 cuff. And this is where I thought I would ask your opinion. So I have to make this part obviously stretchy and flexible, so that she can put it, oh, and I just pulled out stitches, so that she can slide it up her arm and over the IV, at least on one end. But then I've been trying to figure out, should I do a long expanse of patterned just stockinette, so that the middle part is not ribbed, so I can do something more interesting out of it, and then rib again at the other end? Or do you think switching from the ribbing on one end to the ribbing on the other and having that stockinette in the middle, even if it's color work in the middle, do you think it's going to wind up like either doing one of two things, puffing out unattractively and making it look like it's, a balloon sleeve from the 80s, or do you think the risk of it pressing in on the IV would be too much? I am not sure. And I don't really want to waste a whole lot of time trying to figure it out because she needs it soon and I'm knitting slowly. So I don't know. If you have any questions, you can always email me, heather@craftlit.com. If you have ideas, you can put stuff in the chat window as long as I am chatting with you. And yeah, I want to make sure that it's pretty and interesting, but mostly I want it to be useful. And I didn't know if anybody's ever made one of these things before. And I didn't go look at Ravelry because I found this first and thought, oh, I should see how this works if I still have the needles and everything. Also, if you have ideas for any patterningness for the middle part, I've gone from all black cuff to the 2x2 color changed rib. And now I'm doing some black ribbing, just black only ribbing before I started on anything else. Okay, Henrietta says she thinks that there's more risk that the rib will push in harder. And that's what I was hoping. So then the question is, do you think it's going to look like that horrible, that what I'm talking about, those horrible like poofy sleeves that we had to deal with in the 80s? I don't know, you're probably much younger than I am and didn't have to deal with this. Ooh, a looser ribbing. Yeah, I could go up in needle sizes. That would prevent my natural tendency to knit tight. That would stop that from happening. I could do that. And then I could do just like checkerboard changes. And I know on, do I have it with me? No. In the What Would Madame Defarge Knit, the very first book, Dianne, who is our tour guide, who does all of the CraftLit tours in the fall, Dianne designed a watch hat. Was it Ahab's? Watch cap. You would think I would remember this. Oh no, it was Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I knew there was something. She did a very simple men's, it was designed for a man, but I wear one, watch cap that it's all ribbed from the top down. And it has actually it's from the bottom up, and it has the best decreases I've ever knit on the top. I love it, but it's striped. There are places where it's striped. And if you've ever done striping when you do ribbing, it looks awful. You wind up with little, on the purl stitches, you wind up with little nubs of color on which if you want, that's fine. But if you didn't want it, then you're going to be really unhappy. So she has you knit for the color change one entire round in stockinette and then go back to your ribbing. And it's like a miracle. You can't see it. You can't see that one single round of stockinette. It just blends into the background, but it makes your color changes flawless. So there's the helpful tip for today. But yeah, maybe I'll just go. And Henrietta thinks not so much on the puffing out problem as long as there's a colorwork pattern. I was hoping that I may even go up a needle size in the if I do just the stockinette. And I realize I just lost one of the needles pulled out. These needles, by the way, are the square ones. I'm trying to get it to focus again. This is just crazy. It focused so much better last week. I know part of the problem is because it's the cameras for computers are always looking for the color white, which means, Heather, why don't you try putting that behind the white? Yeah, that helped a little bit. So these are those squared off needles. And I know a lot of people had hesitated buying these because they're not cheap, and these are the ones by Kollage, Kollage, Kollage yarns. They're called their square needles, and these are size 4s for US 3.5 millimeter for the rest of the known world. I love them. I knit tight, my hands start to cramp up, and I know a lot of the conventional wisdom is that metal needles don't warm up the same way that wood warms up, and that is probably true. But I have found that these, once they do warm up from my hands, stay warm. So I like those. Yes. Oh, hi, Kathy. Oh my God, Kathy. Hi. Kathy went to England last year. Oh, we had so much fun. Yes, and the photos on Ravelry of Diane's watch cap, people have done all sorts of colors. There, I think somebody's store must have done it as a knit along, because all of a sudden that pattern sold gazillions of numbers. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing pockets of people all over the world who have lots of these. And somebody, let's see. Oh yes, AT. I will totally remind you of the tip on the show notes. I can absolutely put Diane's information there. And Henrietta, yes, the needles are metal. You know, I used to know what kind of metal. I don't know if they're aluminum. They feel more solid. You know how the old aluminum needles were hollow? They were hollow core, and so they had that very lightweight kind of flimsy feel to them. These do not. But then they're small enough that they probably aren't hollow at all. I'm reading. Yes, okay. So once again, if you are knitting and ribbing and you want to change colors, rib away. And then when you're ready to change colors, use the new color, knit a complete round just in stockinette, no ribbing. And then go back to your ribbing again, and it will solve that weird color change problem. So cool. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. I'm doing a lot of mending. I'm not kidding. I'm doing a lot of patching of clothes that have gone bad. Clothes gone bad. So that's not very interesting, but it's fun. Oh, but I had a question. I did have a question. Why can't I read my handwriting? Oh, giveaways. So sometimes people have said, oh, are you going to do any giveaways? And I've said, oh, it's really a lot of work. But when I have something to give away, I do. But I haven't really pursued a whole lot of giveaway-y stuff this year. How important is it, do you think? I mean, not necessarily just to you, but in the grand scheme of things, for podcasts to do monthly giveaways or things like that. I thought I would ask you. And no, Henrietta, it's flannel. These are the boys, one of the boys' pajamas, and he loves them. And the flannel is so worn thin on different parts that I found better flannel, and I'm just tacking. I mean, I'm doing kind of a nice job. I've got very regular stitches, but I'm tacking new flannel onto the old. And my mic is just doing weird things. Is Vicky here? And yes, AT, I imagine that the metal, if the metal needles are aluminum, that's part of why they're holding their heat, because I've noticed that too. And hello, Vicky. It is nice to see you. We had a complete epic fail with our technology today. So Erica has been trying to get on. Dawn is homesick, and my technology didn't start working until too late. I'm really glad you guys were able to find this, because it didn't work the way it was supposed to. I love flannel. I would wrap myself in flannel 24 hours a day if it didn't make me look like I was in Nirvana. But I love cotton flannel. In fact, I found Empire Costumes in New York back in 1990 or 1991. They still had, and I still have, they still had costumes, baseball jerseys made of cotton flannel for the movie The Natural. And I knew somebody who had gotten one, and I said, wow, where'd you get it? And he pulled it out, and it still had a tag in it from the costume shop. So I hunted down the costume shop, and I called them up and said, do you guys still have these? And I said, oh yeah, we got some Red Hot, and we've got some of the Natural jerseys. And I said, oh, how much? And I think it was like $20. So I have one, and I would wear it all the time if I could. It's so lovely. It is so lovely. I'm reading your comments. Yeah, I know. And for a while there, we were getting books from different publishers, and I knew that they were using it as a way to get the word out about their book, which I thought was great. But I also know that that meant I got to give stuff away, which was kind of cool. So I've been thinking about pursuing maybe some of that again, just as a way to get stuff out to you guys, and to also help, especially indie authors, getting information out to people, because it's hard. It's very, very hard. But yeah, I agree with you. It isn't the reason that I listen to podcasts, but then I'm not your average knitting podcast listener, I don't think. And you guys are better than everybody else anyway, so I thought you'd have a good idea. Yeah, Vicky, I think you are absolutely right that sometimes it'll get new people in, but they're not going to stick around, and then what's the point with that? I would rather have people who are going to stick with the book, unless they really hated it, in which case it's better if they don't listen, because I don't want them to hate the show. But yeah, we've been trying to figure out how to get the word out to homeschools. We've been trying to figure this out for years, because the books that we do on the podcast aren't necessarily books that you'd always do in a regular high school. Their curriculum is kind of de facto set already. You know, there's certain Shakespeare books that they're going to do. There's Of Mice and Men, there's Animal Farm. And these are not things that teachers usually need help teaching. The Scarlet Letter is a bear, and we did it on the podcast ages ago because of that. But for homeschools, where kids can move more quickly through the curriculum if they want to, or where parents have a little bit more freedom to tailor the book choices to the child, I think we've done some books that would really help. Like, I mean, Flatland alone, it's like, hey, math curriculum and satire and lots of cool stuff to talk about and Big Bang Theory jokes. And so I'm looking back at all of the books, and I'm trying to figure out two things. One is how to get the word out to homeschools, because I have no idea. And it seems a little creepy to like advertise on their website or something like that. That makes my skin crawl. But the second thing was, we have all these old books that are just sitting there in the library on the podcast website. And if I start tweeting about them or doing anything like that, then current listeners who are listening to the show get real confused, because I've done this a couple times where I've tweeted out older episodes and said, oh, here's the show notes, link to the show notes, link to the audio here, you can listen to this. And people are saying, why are you doing that book again? And so I'm not sure. Everybody who's like marketing people, they say, oh, well, if your content is evergreen, you can just constantly tweet about it. And I'm thinking, no, not really. Maybe just doing Throwback Thursdays and leaving any mention of older books to that kind of thing. I don't know. I got nothing. I am creative about some things, but not creative about this, because it's not something that my grandmother would have been comfortable with, and therefore it is not something that I am comfortable with either. So, but I see you've been typing, so I'm looking. Yes, benefit versus effort, AT, is a big one. I have talked to some homeschool bloggers where I've just emailed them from time to time, or I've put a comment on one of their blog posts that seem to really fit. And when I do that, I tend to not just talk about CraftLit, but I mention Chopbard and CraftLit and Forgotten Classics. And because people have found the NPR shows, and people have found Books on the Nightstand because they got a lot of press. But I haven't seen any traction reaction from those kinds of comments. So I don't even know if they notice them. But oh, AT, that would be awesome. Yeah, and Kathy, the problem I think is some of the good homeschool networking sites are closed group sites, which makes perfect sense because you don't want other people coming in and, you know, yelling at you for homeschooling your kid, for one thing. But yeah, it remains a mystery to me. Someday I will think of a solution, but probably not today. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I know Erica had a picture. Oh, I can at least share Erica's picture. AT, do you have those horrible stink bugs down where you are? They started up here. When did they start up here? They started up here several years ago. They were brought in on some plant from some other country, and they are these nasty little, they're beetles, and I can show you how big they are. They are about the size of the bottom of a tiny, tiny, tiny little Visine bottle. They never get bigger than that, but they are brown and speckled. And while I'm talking about this horrible thing, I'm going to share the picture of Erica at Stitches. So there's Erica at Stitches. Yay. So that's Erica. Yay, I was so happy. I love that picture of her too. She's so happy. And her stuff is gorgeous, which is also nice. But these stink bugs, they aren't called stink bugs because they stink. They're called stink bugs because if you kill them, the smell that they give off is attractive to other stink bugs. So you'll get more stink bugs coming if you kill one. How evil is that? The reason I mention this is because they come inside when it's bad outside. So anytime it gets really cold, they make their way inside. Right now it's raining outside. They're making their way inside. And one of them just flew down across my line of vision and has landed somewhere over by the window. Evil. Now, the nice part is that they are super slow and really stupid. And so we have a vacuum, and it is the stink bug vacuum. And you can just go seriously, just right up to them, go, and then they're trapped. Oh well. But boy, I do not like them at all. And now I can't see where it went, so I can't go vacuum it. I have to wait until it flies out in front of me again. Ew. I think that's it. Oh, there's more typing. Hang on. Do horses eat them? Oh no, AT. Oh no, that's horrible. Oh, that's bad. I know some, dogs, they learn. Wow, that tasted really nasty. And they're awful. Oh. Henrietta said bilingual parents networks. That's really good because I know a lot of people who listen to the show are learning English or they use it to practice English because the vocabulary in these books is so much better than anything you're going to get in USA Today. Yes. I think if people who use the podcast who live in an English-speaking country when English isn't their native language, it helps. Plus, it helps with context and references. And I know humor is the hardest thing to achieve, being able to be funny in another language, but also to understand humor in another language, because so much of it is idiomatic that it's really useful to have to learn as much context. This is actually a huge battle in education right now, because they're the people who say, oh, well, kids who have a hard time reading or who have historically had a hard time learning how to read, you need to give them easier books so that they feel more successful. And those books tend to be, this is a narwhal. It has a horn. It lives in the ocean. It is 5 feet long, whatever. Just boring. And I mean, it's kind of nice to know what a narwhal is, I guess. But in the grand scheme of things, you're not really learning content that's going to be useful or something that people will connect to. Or worse, it's just lousy stories that don't have any content information at all, not even about a narwhal. And so the argument that I've always made is that if you help kids read the books that are hard, then they'll be getting the content information that will allow them to understand the people talking around them and other books that they're going to read. And at the same time, you gradually build them up to the point where by the end of the book, they're a better reader. But you have to front load a lot of work at the beginning of it. And that's kind of how I designed my classroom when I worked in New York, and it seemed to work pretty well. But it's, I know people get very upset about all of this. Yes, Henrietta, you do not. It's the eastern coast of the country. I guess they go from above New York and all the way down to Henrietta. And I understand they started in Pennsylvania, so we're not very happy about that. They can also flatten themselves. That's how they get in. They flatten themselves and comes through tiny cracks in windows and things. Oh my God, they get in the hay and then they can kill the horse. That's horrible. How do you get rid of them? By the way, there's no way to get rid of them. That's the other part. You can get traps that, you can make traps actually out of 2-liter bottles. You cut and invert the top so that the bugs will fly in, but they can't fly out. And you put one of those little clicky lights, the little, you can stick them on the back and put it in a closet that doesn't have a light bulb in it. You can put one of those clicky lights underneath the bottom of the bottle and put some black paper around it so they don't fly towards the light. You want them to come down towards the light. And once they're in there, they're done for. You can put water in the bottom and be done with it. But you can't put those all around the barn. For one thing, the horses will kick them over. That's awful. Yes, I'm totally with you, Henrietta. You need to give them interesting books. And interesting books that have things happening, suspense and exciting things. And ooh, Kathy, that's a good point. Homeschoolers talking to librarians. I could talk to the ALA. I hadn't thought about that. See, I knew you guys were smart. Because the American Library Association, Shannon Oki, who does the Defarge books, Cooperative Press, I know she knows some people at the ALA. So maybe I can talk to them. Oh, yay. Oh, Henrietta, you're so awesome. Yay. And yay, Denmark. My cousin, actually, who is a year younger than me, when he was in high school, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he was in high school. He did a year abroad or a semester abroad, and he went to Denmark. And so I have been listening to his stories of Denmark since, for 20 years. And so I've always had a very fond spot in my heart for Denmark. So anytime I see that listeners are coming from Denmark, I go, yay. And then he wound up getting married in Finland. So now I've got 2 countries where I see people pop in. And then there's Norway, because my husband, some of his plays were produced in Norway. He was working with a guy who was translating his plays into Norwegian. And he got an excellent Norwegian compliment, which was that people thought he was as good as Ibsen, which Americans probably wouldn't think of as a compliment. But coming from a Norwegian, it was pretty awesome. So yeah, we like Denmark. I have stuff from Denmark downstairs. I have some wooden stuff and some stuff from Finland too. Oh, that's awful. AT, shaking out the hay. I'm surprised that even works, because the stink bugs here seem to stick to things. They've got the little sticky feet. Yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Ooh. How's your degree? Henrietta's been working on a massive degree. We talked about it, a year, 2 years ago? Has it been that long? Oh my gosh, it has been, because I was still in Virginia. Wow. How's it all going? Is everything going well? I hope it's going well. Yes, and being told that you're as good as Ibsen, it's not bad. My husband is an incredible playwright. Well, he's an incredible writer, and his murder mysteries that he's been working on are fun, but his plays, it's part of why I fell in love with him. There is no question, because his words are just beautiful, and he writes amazing women, and his rejection letters were always brilliant, lyrical, one of the best plays I've ever read. I'm sorry, I can't represent you, or I'm sorry, we can't produce it, or something like that. And you're just sitting there going, why? Brilliant, lyrical, and one of the best plays I've ever read. And I'm sorry, I don't know what it takes. If that doesn't do it, I got nothing. Henrietta, you're an assistant professor now at the University of Copenhagen. This is fantastic. I didn't know. I haven't been paying any attention. I've been in a hole. That is so cool. Now, what did you, because you had kind of a broad spectrum thing. What did you get your professorship in? What was your the name of your dissertation? I don't even know what the title of your dissertation was. I know, that is so awesome, isn't it? Yay! Yes, and A Doll's House. I got to see it on Broadway with Jeanette. Now I can't remember her name. It'll come to me at 3 a.m. when I wake up again. Digital humanities. Oh my gosh. Okay, Henrietta's degree is in digital humanities, which is, I'm going to guess, kind of new, broadly speaking. I think that's a nice way to put it. But yay you. That's going to make you kind of cutting edge front and center, isn't it? To have a degree in digital humanities? Because they didn't have those when I was at college. Oh my God. Tea. I don't like this tea, but I need this tea. It's called Throat Coat, and it's got slippery elm bark in it, which tastes like licorice. And I really don't like black licorice, but it's a good tea. I know digital humanities does sound like an oxymoron, doesn't it? We were just talking about that the other day, that the perception of the digital community is that it's all just a bunch of techies and tech geeks. And that every time somebody finds out that there's something like Ravelry online, and it's a bunch of, people who spend their day doing these things, they're always so mystified that people who knit know how to find the internet. Why, yes, as a matter of fact, we do. Henrietta said sometimes it's a bit too cutting edge, I guess, but it's fun. I'm so glad. And I'm so glad you're done. Wow, that's a lot of work. But it is now 2:34, and I'm going to have to get going because thing 1 and thing 2 are going to be home, and then it's homework time. And that's when the mom hat comes on. We've been building a volcano, is what we've been doing. Not the kind that has the baking soda volcanic eruption, but we actually had to make a 3-sided volcano with a base that he can then, this is for thing 2, he then has to put information about the 3 kinds of volcanoes on the sides. So one of the triangular sides will have, a shield volcano, and then the next side will have a stratovolcano, and then the last side will have a cinder cone. And he has to have examples, and he has to have all these details. And he said, oh, I know everything about him. I don't have to do any extra research. And I said, really? Okay, well, tell me what you know about him. And he said, well, this, and this. And I said, oh, well, that's really interesting. Well, why is that one more explosive? Long pause. I don't know. Okay, well, write that down, because that's probably a question you should know the answer to, is if it's saying that this kind is more explosive than this kind, then you should probably know why. It's the why questions that got him. And I kept asking him because I'm evil. Oh, Henrietta says that that's actually become her special area, how people use the internet for do-it-yourself purposes. Have you written anything? Because when we talked, we were talking about all the cognitive anchoring stuff and how that all applies. Have you done any articles / posts anywhere that I can point people to when they start looking at me like I'm a crazy person? Because that would be a good thing to give us links to. Kathy, I know I learn so much when I'm helping my kids, especially now that they're older. There was, oh my God, this is something I could never talk about on the podcast because it is 100% visual. So this will be my last thing for you. And I have to write it down. When our generation, do multiplication, I have to come up with something that's easy. So if we were going to do something like 525 times 25, the way I learned would be you take the 5, so you take the ones place on the bottom, and you multiply that times the 3 numbers at the top. So you would get your first row would be 2,625. I'm hoping I'm doing the math right because calculation was always where I screwed everything up. So you get that for your first line. And then for your second line, you would start by eliminating that first ones place in the second line of solution. And you would go from there. So you would have 1, and I'm saying it this way on purpose, you would have 1, 0, 4, 0, and then a blank space. And then you would add those rows. And watch, I know I'm going to do this wrong. And so your answer would be 12,025. Now, when thing 2 came home from school last year, he came home with the same problem, 525 times 25. And this is how his teacher had him solve it. I almost did it wrong again. That would be your first line. And that's the ones. I'm trying to focus. That would be the ones line, because you would take the 5 and you'd multiply it by 2. And then you take the 5 and you'd multiply it by, 5 multiply it by 5, 5 multiplied by 2. And then you'd have your next line, which would be the 2 line, and you would see, I'm not sure I'm going to do it right because I'm not thinking. Then you do the 2s, and so you have a row for the 2s, and then you do the 5s, and then you have a row for the 5s, because you're multiplying from the top down instead of the bottom up. And I looked at it and said, your teacher is absolutely insane. What is going on here? And we couldn't figure it out. And then Andrew came home, and he's done a lot more research into math instruction when it comes to number sense, and the fact that I learned none of it. He learned none of it. None of us learned any of this kind of being able to conceptualize about numbers. For example, place value. I knew where the ones place was and the tens place was and the hundreds place was. And I know they made a big deal about learning what those places were. And it seemed like a no-brainer to me. Well, the ones place is where the ones go. And once you get 9 of those ones, you have to start a 10. And that's going to bleed you over into the next space because it's a spatial thing in my right brain. What his teacher was trying to get them to do was to understand place value on a different level. That whether you were going from the 525 on the top or the 25 on the bottom, the ones place, if you multiply everything by the ones place number on top, that's the ones place number. And then when you multiply by the tens place, that's where the tens start. So it doesn't go back to the ones place. You don't need to have the X because it's a no-brainer if you think about it that way. You're starting in the tens place for your row that you're going to add up at the end. And then when you start with the 5 from the hundreds place, it's the same thing. Now you've got a hundreds place row. So you have a ones place row, a tens place row, a hundreds place row, and so on. And when Andrew finally figured it out, everybody in the room, all four of us went, that's what multiplication has been all this time. And I never understood that you could approach it a different way at all, much less get the right answer. And I kept thinking, if I had known that, it would have completely changed. If I had seen numbers that way, it would have completely changed everything. And there I am, it all came from my reaction to my son's homework of, I can't believe how stupid this is, to, oh my God, this rocked my world. And I'm not going to look at numbers the same way ever again because I can't. It's just not the same world anymore. So, right, I know, Kathy, mind blown. You know what I'll do is I'll actually do the math thing properly and put it on the show notes, or put a JPEG of it so you can see. Yeah, Henrietta, the whole math instruction, I don't know if it's as insane in Europe as it is here, but I think the problem is that nobody my age learned math particularly well. And so if you're an elementary school teacher, you probably didn't learn math well either. And the people who did learn math well, who major in it or teach it in high school, are people who were good at it. And so they never really learned math well either, because they didn't need to. They got the right answers. All they have to do is, have you go through the book and do what you do in the book. And so finding a really good math teacher at any level right now is tricky. And not the fault of, it's not anyone's fault. It's not like, oh, well, you math teachers suck. It's, well, no, I was lucky as an English teacher because I had an 8th grade English teacher who was a former nun who taught us how to diagram. And that's the only time I learned grammar. So, well, except for Spanish and French, but I learned more grammar there than I did in my English classes. But it's just what you get taught, and stuff gets dropped as we go along because there's new stuff to teach and learn about. Imperfect world. Good reason for podcasts. AT, are you serious? Oh, I can't believe nobody talked about number sense when I was in school. Yes, Kathy, and I think that is the important thing. It's not just that, oh, here's another way to look at it. There is no one right way. And because of that, I think the corollary is, and because there's no one right way to do the thing, that's why you need kids to show their work. It's not punishment, and it's not even, I want to see that you're doing it my way or the right way. I want to see how you're doing it, because every once in a while you're going to get a kid in class who sees it completely differently, and you'll learn from them, and that's awesome. And I wish I'd known that there were other ways, because I always got stuff conceptually in my math classes, and I always screwed up computation because letters mattered more than numbers did. Not to mention the fact that I'm synesthetic when it comes to letters and numbers, especially numbers. And so they have gender. Numbers have gender, and numbers have personalities. And I don't like all of the numbers. Some of them are not very nice. And I know as a kid, I didn't realize that nobody else was like this. And I didn't understand why they kept making me work with 3s, because 3s were just not very nice. They were the mean girls, actually, is what 3s were. So, show them work, partial credit. Oh, underage gamer, I'm sorry, I cannot speak French for you. What I can do, though, is I can point you to a book that we're listening to on the podcast on Fridays called CraftLit, and we are reading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and the guy who reads the book can speak French way more better than I can. And AT, I love diagramming sentences too, because there was an answer. And there wasn't always one right answer. Sometimes if you got a really big, complicated sentence, there were different ways to solve it. And as harsh as my former nun teacher was, she did allow us to defend our variations, which was kind of nice. See, 3 and 5. Well, 5, see, I was born 5/5, so 5 was okay in my book. Not that 5s are easy to get along with, she said, knowing that that's basically the representation of herself. But 3s, you'd think I would have been less enamored of 9s, but I felt bad for 9s because 9s and 6 got confused with each other all the time, like two girls who look alike. Yeah, so I felt bad for 9s. All right, I have now talked for another 10 minutes, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to go prepare for the kids. Oh, yay! Oh, yay! I'm so excited. Yay. Thank you, Kathy. All right, I hope you have a great week until I talk to you again on Friday. And I think that's it. I hope you are well. Stay well. Please have a good week until we hear about what happens to Edmund in the Count of Monte Cristo. Because it's gonna heat up. We're getting close to the good stuff. All right. Bye. It was good. It was so good to see you guys. I mean, even, little icons of you, but at least to be able to see what you're saying and talk to you. Yay. All right. Have a great time. I'll talk to you later. Bye.